It's NFL playoff time and still fantasy time. We actually did a draft a couple of days ago, sort of our own little playoff challenge draft. For some reason, Jamie made us draft 2 kickers and 2 DSTs. That was pretty cruel. Not cool. Not cool. Cruel. There's an R in there. Anyway, all right. There's no comment. No comment, folks. Welcome to the show. We're also going to talk about our top 12 quarterbacks for 2024 and the controversial decisions we made there. Who is number one? Is probably going to be Josh Allen, right? Where's Patrick Mahomes? Where's Lamar Jackson? Where's Dak Prescott? Where's Brock Purdy? Is he even in the top 12? Is Tua in the top 12? Where's CJ Stroud? Well, I'll tell you where he is. He's in Houston getting ready for the Cleveland Browns on Saturday, the first playoff game, 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Miami, Kansas City, Saturday night. 3 games on Sunday. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Green Bay, Dallas, Rams at Lions, and Monday, the Eagles are at Tampa Bay. All right, guys. Anybody retiring? Anybody want to get that out of the way? I know we had some of the most longest tenured, greatest coaches ever out this week. You guys are still here, right?
Yeah, you can make a case. Two of the coaches that would be on the Mount Rushmore of coaches, forget about level, have stepped away from their teams in the last 24 hours.
And I have stepped away from the stream. There we go. There, I'm back. Yeah, it's crazy. And Pete Carroll is no slouch. He's not on Mount Rushmore, but there's like another mountain not far away that he's on.
He might have been on there if he just ran the ball.
Man. Yeah. Well,
what he did in college and pro.
Exactly. I mean, what he did at USC was really remarkable. So,
sounds like he wants to coach again, though.
Oh yeah, it does not sound like he really wanted to be put into an advisor role with the Seahawks. I was going to ask how many of these 3 guys, Belichick, Saban, Carroll, will coach again in 2024?
1.
Yeah, that's what I think. 1. Belichick, I assume.
I think Saban's done. Sounds like he's not going to the NFL again. And based on everything you've heard over the last 24 hours, the NIL stuff and the transfer portal, kind of, maybe decided this for him a little bit sooner than maybe he wanted to, or, made the decision easier for him. Belichick, I would imagine, is either going to be in Los Angeles, maybe Carolina. Who knows? One of those 2 spots.
Washington.
Not Washington. Do not expect him to be in Washington.
Okay.
I would be surprised if that happens, but it could. But yeah, you have some fun landing spots for him. I just hope that they'd let him coach and just not make personnel decisions.
Make him coach and not let him make personnel decisions. They say no, thanks, but no, we're good. Yeah, I mean, any fantasy thoughts here? I feel like more relevant that Pete Carroll is gone than Bill Belichick, mostly because we were bracing for that.
Sure.
But, yeah, what do you think, Dave?
Everything's up for grabs in Seattle and New England, and what you knew about those teams before might not be there moving forward, because we know that Pete Carroll loved balance, loved running the football, loved a specific type of running back. I'm assuming that they won't be too far off from that, but it depends on how they reshape the entire coaching staff and who the next head coach is. And will Pete Carroll have a hand in picking that next head coach? I just don't know. The fact that Carroll didn't seem thrilled with this news makes me unsure what that direction will be. And then I really still don't know what's going to happen in New England, but they better go in a different direction offensively than what they've been in since basically 2020. So hopefully things are better there and they make some good coaching hires there. We'll just have to wait and see.
New England clearly has the chance to hit the reset button because of, how Belichick's established that culture, which clearly has been very successful during his tenure, but there's not a lot of pieces in place, and they're going to get a new quarterback, so there's going to be a lot of change in New England, whether Belichick was going to be there or not. And so it's just a matter of, it could be one of his disciples, whether it's Mike Vrabel or Mayo, as the 2, I think, most likely names that you'll hear, unless they just go outside the family tree. Or, somebody that just completely changes everything that's been established in New England for the last 24 years. For the Seahawks, they're kind of stuck unless they replace Geno, because they're not bringing in more running backs. They're not probably turning over the receiving core tremendously. So what you see is what you get, but they could move on from Geno, who we know signed, a team-friendly deal last season. And so he may not be replaced this year, but certainly by 2025, they may have a new quarterback in place, and they may find a successor this season if, things work out well for them in the draft, or they decide to move up. John Schneider's certainly been aggressive at times as a general manager there. So we could see that change for the Seahawks if there is, somebody that comes in and says, you know what, I like Geno, but I don't love him, and we need to find a younger guy that's going to take us into the next iteration or whatever our team looks like. So Seahawks probably look the same. New England looks probably dramatically different, unless, of course, just, same philosophical design by somebody that's, familiar with what Belichick did.
They can move on from Geno and save a ton of money. He's got almost a $10 million roster bonus due on March 20th. If he's a post-June 1st cut, it saves them over $22 million on the cap. So I would imagine that Geno, the odds are not great that he will be there next year.
Well, why though? I mean, he's good enough. It's not easy to find. You can't just find a guy that's going to play as well as Geno Smith has played. Not that he was amazing this year, but he was good enough, certainly. I think if they get rid of Geno, there's a good chance they're taking a step back at quarterback. Why would you want to do that if you're a new head coach?
Well, unless of course there's an aggressive move in the draft to go up and get somebody that
sure,
that they feel like they like, and clearly there's the logical one would be based on cost. The guy that's been in their backyard, if they really like Penix, he's going to be the fourth of the top four most likely. So that's not something I think that you have to be super aggressive to go get. Maybe gets you into the middle of the first round and you can go draft him. But I don't know. I mean, you got to figure out who's going to be the play caller there, and is the philosophy okay? Yes, we can go still win now with this team, or do we want to sort of try and compete in a year, and again start things over? I don't think that's the mentality though. If you're taking the Seattle job, because Seattle does have an opportunity to be competitive with a few things that they tweak.
Right. So I don't know why you'd get rid of Geno.
I don't see them moving on from Geno this season. I think 2025 is the opportunity to move on from Geno.
If he restructures his contract, he can stay and be the bridge quarterback that they need.
All right. And perhaps more fantasy relevant note here. GM Ryan Poles of the Chicago Bears. Remember yesterday we told you they got rid of their offensive coordinator, but he was asked about drafting a quarterback, and he said he'd have to be blown away by a quarterback to move on from Justin Fields. But it's very possible that he will be blown away by a quarterback. So this is really a huge decision here that will have major implications for multiple players in terms of fantasy football, is what the Bears do with the number 1 overall pick. Meanwhile, what are we going to do on today's
everything show? that they've done suggests it's run it back.
They haven't done that much. I mean,
well, keeping Eberflus kind of suggests run it back.
But they got rid of the offensive coordinator. They got rid of the quarterback's coach. So they're going to bring in another new offense. This is going to be, I think it's Fields' 3rd new offense in his career, and he's only been in the NFL for just a handful of years. I don't know if he's a lock to be there. Maybe. We'll see.
Well, he's not a lock. I mean, that's clear. He's not. It's a guessing game, and it's really exciting, and it's fun. It's fun from a dynasty standpoint. It's what happens with these guys.
We could link the two teams that we just talked about. Maybe Seattle makes a play for Fields. Every indication is that Fields will not cost a 1st-round pick to acquire. So that's almost exactly the type of quarterback that John Schneider should go after in Seattle.
Well, you know who has the Seahawks 2nd-round pick? The team that gave them Leonard Williams.
Yes, that's true. They could always give seconds in 2025.
Let's move on. Well, I'm saying, who's got more capital right now? We're getting them. We're getting them. Caleb Williams. Let's go. All right.
Which team that you love?
Still the Giants.
Okay.
DeVito ruined that for you. You could have been in the top 5.
I'd say Tyrod ruined that too. But look, I mean, Arizona and the Chargers aren't drafting quarterbacks. Doesn't seem like so. Anyway, no. Let's see. Sam, okay, let's do some notes for this weekend and the games coming up. We're going to give you our DFS advice later in the show after we talk about our top 12 quarterbacks for 2024. Of course, that will change throughout the offseason. Sam Laporta and Khalif Raymond missed practice for the Lions hosting the Rams this weekend. Amari Cooper has not practiced, but he says he will play. He says he's fine. Cleveland safety Grant Delpit is eligible to return from IR. That would be a nice boost for them at Houston. Houston, meanwhile, their defensive line is beat up. You should expect Will Anderson to play. He plays through his ankle injury, but they do have some injuries there. Jimmy Ward's on IR, so Houston defensively not exactly what they've been for most of the season. Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert were limited. But defensive backs, Xavier Howard, Javon Holland, and Deshaun Elliott for the Dolphins, they were all out. Not sure they're going to play this week.
It's going to be
Kansas City. It's going to be tough. Philadelphia wide receivers, we don't have an update on them. Their first practice is today as they have the Monday game at Tampa Bay. Gabe Davis missed practice. Pittsburgh should have both of their starting safeties back this week, which will be nice. Of course, a lot of wide receivers limited for the Packers, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Doubs actually left week 18 with a chest injury, but Watson and Doubs both limited. Luke Musgrave also limited for Green Bay. A.J. Dillon may not play. He's got that thumb injury. Jonathan Hankins, Dallas defensive tackle. We always talk about him. He's their best run stuffer. He was limited. It's good that he was able to get a limited practice in. Dallas offensive lineman Tyler Smith also limited. Jerick McKinnon doubtful to return in the playoffs, according to Chiefs Digest. And John Harbaugh said that Dalvin Cook is potentially a very valuable weapon for the Ravens offense. We'll see. I already saw some people said they voted, so I want to thank you for that. I'm going to make this quick. Go to sportspodcastawards.com, click vote now, best fantasy betting and gaming category, and vote for fantasy football today. You have 2 more weeks, please, to vote for us. Tell your friends to vote for us. We want to win this thing, and it is entirely up to you, our audience. Sportspodcastawards.com, click vote now. Best fantasy betting and gaming podcast. Links are in the episode description and also the QR code on YouTube. We'll be right back with a look at our top 12 quarterbacks for 2024.
Run it back. No point, no fear, no fame, no story, no blood, no pain, never overthrow me. This is my name, this is my story. This is my time, my territory. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the end of the road. You want to win it all? Better be ready to go.
All right, folks, let's do it. Top 12 quarterbacks for 2024. What's your most controversial ranking? Whether it's someone in the top 24, out of the top 12, out of the top 12. Ooh, saying like top 24 for 2024, it's going to get very confusing for me. I can already see that. But top 12 quarterbacks. Dave, what's your most controversial ranking?
I don't know if I've got a controversial ranking. Is Joe Burrow at 5 controversial? Is Anthony Richardson at 10 controversial? Justin Fields at 12 controversial? I don't know. I don't know if there's really
low for
anything
Fields.
Controversial there. Yeah,
That's
okay. So averaged just over 20 fantasy points per game this past year. We don't know where he's going to play or who it'll be with or what his upside will be. There are so many other quarterbacks who I think have much more upside that Fields just kept falling further and further down my quarterback rankings.
Okay. Jamie, what's your most controversial?
It's probably twofold. One, Herbert at 12. Just, the uncertainty of what the receiving core is and who the coach is going to be. So that can certainly change, over the next couple of months. And then not having Kyler Murray in the top 12. It feels like he's got the upside to be even a top 5 guy if they can maybe bring in another piece at the wide receiver position. But, he did some nice things coming back. 4 of his 8 games over 22 points following the ACL tear. And, year 2 is typically better for, most players. Quarterbacks usually bounce back a little bit sooner. But in any event, he's somebody that I would not mind drafting as a starter.
Did you find that there were too many quarterbacks that you'd be okay with starting, and that you can't cram 17 guys into your top 12? But I've got 5 names outside of my top 12, and I don't mind waiting for any one of them or 2 of them on draft day. Like, I'm already going back to that type of strategy of just waiting on quarterback and then collecting 2 of them, especially if one of them is Kyler.
I don't know if there's 5. I mean, I'd like to see what Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins look like, based on their health. And, in the case of Rodgers, receiving core and offensive line. I would like to see, what kind of shape Stafford comes back in, after the way that he looked this season, and hopefully as good as he finished, so we'll see how the playoff run goes. But the one that's going to be fun to rank, maybe a couple of them, is going to be the rookies, but Caleb Williams, so he's got the potential to have a CJ Stroud type of rookie impact. And I think a lot of people might get overexcited about him, maybe like to the same effect that we did with Anthony Richardson last year, where he gets drafted that way. But I think to your point, Dave, if you do take a quarterback that has some risks, there is plenty of good, safe fallback options. And we say it every year. There's going to be 1 or 2 guys that come outside of the top 12 that have the ability to be weekly starters, and we saw that with 5 guys this season. So there's no reason to reach for the position.
No,
No.
agreed. Here are
we
the
were
5 that I had.
we were not saying that last year. I mean, well, we were saying some of that, but we were definitely saying that last year felt like the year to be more aggressive at quarterback, and it didn't work. At least I think that's what the general consensus was. I don't
It
want to
was
speak.
definitely the general consensus. I mean, I felt like I still felt like I wanted to wait, and for the most part I did.
Mhm.
But it's I think this year just kind of shows you, like, and the depth of the position. Yes, you could say the depth was sort of tested last year as well by who was missing based on how things were drafted. But I mean, Dak Prescott was the 12th quarterback off the board.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy and Jordan Love were in their 20s based on ADP. And for legitimate concerns. I'm not saying that we were wrong to not promote those guys last year. Purdy was coming off elbow surgery. Jordan Love was stepping into a first time starter with what we thought was a very, young and
Raw.
incomplete receiving core, with what was available to him. And those 2 guys were stars. And then nobody saw CJ Stroud doing this to this level. I mean, it just doesn't typically happen for rookie quarterbacks. So there are certainly reasons why the position got a little bit more robust. But at the same time, it's like, it sort of fell into a perfect storm. The 3 guys at the top didn't necessarily have dominant seasons. They were certainly, 2 of them were good, in Hurts and Allen. Mahomes falling off is a big part of this. But, it's really just those guys not having dominant seasons. And then these other guys just coming out of nowhere, especially at their youth. So there's I think reason for hope and reason for
Right. You can make the case for all the quarterbacks that underwhelmed, and you've got all these other quarterbacks that showed why they have upside. I remember thinking about drafting quarterbacks at a fair value. I didn't want to reach, didn't want to prioritize, but if there was one that was there at a fair value, like Josh Allen in round 3 last year, or Mahomes in round 3, let's make the worst quarterback of him. If he was around in round 3, I would have taken him then.
Right, but
I,
you're saying
I
that in your drafts, and that includes our drafts.
sure.
And so that doesn't happen in most people's drafts based on how average draft
It's
position.
true. It's true. And in most people's drafts, Mahomes and Allen and Hurts went earlier than I was comfortable taking them because I knew that there were receivers, running backs, and Kelsey who I would take ahead of those guys because I knew that even though those guys, like we assumed that those 3 would have like monster type years, 28 PPR or 28 fantasy points per game. Look at me saying PPR, 28 fantasy points per game, that type of ceiling. But there were still so many other quarterbacks that you could look at and say, all right, that guy could get you 20 to 22 fantasy points per game and they'd be all right. And it turned out that all 3 of those quarterbacks fell below. No quarterback had 28 fantasy points per game. Josh Allen is the only one that averaged north of 25. So every great quarterback kind of took a step back, and then a lot of quarterbacks surprised. And that's kind of the wonder of fantasy football is the surprises, and certainly at quarterback too. And so now I think it's twofold. We need to do a really good job of highlighting the quarterbacks that we think have huge upside. Kyler is definitely a candidate for that. And then of the quarterbacks that we've got ranked top 10, top 12, who are the ones that have the traps that are going to hurt us and be duds this year. And so that's what we're going to have to work on over the next couple of months. And I'm saying that straight face, knowing Anthony Richardson is one of those trap guys. Could absolutely be a total dud. Stroud could be a trap guy too, where he regresses back. We could make that case for a lot of quarterbacks.
I'm gonna guess that based on how last season unfolded, Richardson is not going to be drafted as a number 1 quarterback. He wasn't last year. So coming off an injury riddled season, he's probably going to be one of those guys that's outside the top 12. That being said, 2 guys that were drafted based on ADP inside the top 12 were Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. Now, that has somewhat to do with projections because of how people look in draft rooms, and the novice player typically tends to say, okay, this guy's being projected or ranked in a certain way. I must be missing something, or someone's telling me to take them. For people that don't play this game very much. Now, our audience is not necessarily like that, but I think the thing that you'll find with quarterbacks this year, and I know, like for me, like I play in a lot of leagues, so I try to do a variety of different strategies with this. And actually, my most expensive league, I had the first overall pick. on the turn, the best available player based on my rankings last year, which is where I had the quarterbacks ranked, which was like 25, 26, was Mahomes. And so I ended up with Mahomes. He was the first quarterback off the board. He was my number one quarterback last year. And so it luckily it worked out. I ended up winning the league in spite of Mahomes. Thank you, Kyron Williams. But I had a league with Hurts. I had a league with Allen. And then everything else for me was, kind of to your point, Dave, I think, but more realistic to, I think, what people were drafting, of taking advantage of the best value on the board, which at that point was probably quarterbacks. A lot of Joe Burrow, and thankfully replacing him with Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott. A lot of Justin Fields. Those were probably my two most rostered quarterbacks across the board. But I think that's the approach is, whenever you see something, and you sort of, mentioned this earlier this week, Adam, about, having the quarterbacks in your top 24, that if you don't love the player values that are there, there's probably a quarterback that can save you, in essence, from making a mistake in your draft.
And so does that open the door to being, let me start over. Does that make you more open to taking two quarterbacks, assuming that one of the quarterbacks is not Allen, Hurts, Lamar?
I think you got to know your league. You really have to know your league. If your league is going to take two quarterbacks, like we've drafted enough with each other over the years, in the draft that we just did, and I think I referenced yesterday, I knew that there were three quarterbacks that I liked that were still on the board, and that was CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, and Kyler Murray.
This was in round what?
This was starting in round 8 or 9.
Okay.
And so I looked at the draft board. I saw that there was one other person that didn't have a quarterback at that point, and that was Chris Towers, who was picking on the end. And I said, okay, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I don't do it here, I know Adam at least is going to probably start to consider a second quarterback, and that's exactly what happened. Because again, I know how he drafts, so I knew he was going to consider it, and he.
You don't know who I draft,
huh?
You don't know who I draft.
I know how you draft. So I knew that there was the possibility of him taking a quarterback, and so he did, and he took CJ Stroud.
Damn right.
So, huh?
Damn right, I took CJ Stroud. I was
right.
very happy.
And it was a quality draft pick for you in your mind, and then it came back around, and I'm like, and I still didn't have a tight end at this point, and I thought, okay, I'll probably get one of Purdy or Love or Kyler. Sorry, the four quarterbacks, I should have said. And so Evan Ingram was on the board, took tight end, and then it worked out well. Chris took Purdy, and I ended up with Jordan Love, and I was thrilled with that. Absolutely thrilled with that. He's top 10 quarterback for me.
So is that more about knowing who you're drafting with, or knowing who's left on the board that you'd be happy to have fall to you if you had all those quarterbacks?
It's both. It's absolutely both.
I agree. But
we're basically doing a position preview right now. I really need to get into the rankings. We haven't unveiled any rankings yet, so I just want to focus on that a little bit here. So let's go. Give me your top 3 quarterbacks. Jamie, go ahead.
Same as last year. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, different order though.
Different order.
Josh Allen, Hurts, Mahomes. That's my top 3 also. Dave?
I've got Lamar in my top 3. Allen, Hurts, Lamar.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had Lamar ahead of Mahomes.
All right. But we all have then we all have the same top 4 then.
Mahomes.
Dave, you have a Mahomes 4?
I have Mahomes at 4.
I put Mahomes ahead of Jackson. 6 point per pass. This is 6 point per passing touchdown. 4 point probably Jackson ahead of Mahomes. It's weird.
That will clearly change if they add a receiver.
It's PPR, yeah, Dave. Also, I just the last time it was 2 years ago when Tyreek Hill left for the Dolphins, and Mahomes I think was QB4 in ADP, and it was a big mistake. Everyone, the community, the fantasy was too low on Patrick Mahomes, so I don't love doubting him. All right, so Allen, Hurts, Jackson, Mahomes, or Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Jackson. Who's 5 and 6? Jamie.
I should probably look so I make sure I get it right. 5 is Dak, 6 is Burrow.
Dave?
Burrow is 5, and I currently have Herbert at 6, working under the assumption that his receiving core will be just fine.
So everyone has Burrow in the top 6. I have Burrow 5. I have Justin Fields 6. Dave has Burrow 5, Herbert 6. Jamie has Burrow 6, Dak 5. Okay. 7 and 8, Jamie.
7 is Purdy. 8 is Stroud.
Purdy. Wow. Okay. Dave, how about you? 7 and
So
8.
I think the biggest difference so far is that I've got Herbert higher than Jamie because my 7 and 8 are Prescott and Purdy, and then my 9 is Stroud.
I'll just say I have Kyler 7 and Stroud 8. I did favor the mobile guy. Once we got to this point, I was really I have Tua, Purdy, and Prescott 11, 12, and 13. It's stupid for me to have Prescott 13. So that would change. I'd probably put him 11 and Purdy 12 and Tua 13. But all right, so 7 and 8. One more time. 7, 8 for me was Kyler, Stroud. Dave, for you it was
7 is Dak, 8 is Purdy.
and Jamie.
Purdy is 7, Stroud is 8.
All right, so you guys both have Stroud and Purdy in your top 8. 9 and 10, Jamie.
9 is Love, 10 is Fields.
My 9 is Stroud. My 10 is Anthony Richardson.
My 9 is Richardson. 10 is Herbert for me. You haven't said Herbert yet, have you, Jamie?
No, he's 12 for me.
Okay, so who's 11 and 12?
11 is Richardson, 12 is Herbert.
Dave?
Love Fields, 11, 12.
Where'd you have Richardson, Dave?
10.
Okay. All right. So what stands out to you
Oh, you didn't
guys?
ask me 10. Fields is 10 for me.
Oh, Fields is 10. Okay. And Fields is what for you, Dave?
12.
Okay. So I was a high guy on Fields.
This has to be so confusing for everybody listening.
Yeah, I know.
Like, where's the consensus, right? I think our top 4, there's a
Well,
pretty
there's a story on the
strong
site. You can see all 7 of our rankings. So
Okay.
just go to cbssports.com.
That's fair. Consensus in the top 4. And I think we've got a pretty good consensus of who makes up like 6 through 12. 5 through 12. There's probably good consensus all the way
We all
around.
have Burrow in our top
Herbert,
6.
yeah, Herbert is the one that I think we're just different on, and I'm more aggressive because I think he'll be okay.
It's Herbert, Fields, and then Purdy and Dak, I'd say, is what the differences are between us. Between you two, it's probably more Herbert and Herbert. All right, so yeah, Herbert, I had 10. Jamie, you had Herbert 12. And Dave, you had him
6.
Go ahead, explain.
I can run down Heath's rankings if you just want another one.
Honestly, not really, because
Well, he has Herbert at 12 also.
all right, go. You can say it. Go ahead. It's just a lot. But go ahead.
He has the same top. We have the same top 4: Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes. Wow, geez, same exact rankings. We have the same top 8, just different order with 7 and 8. So it's Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes, Dak, Burrow. Stroud is 7 for him. Purdy is 8. Fields is 9. Richardson's 10. Kyler is 11, and Herbert is 12. So he does not have Jordan Love in his top 12.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, why so high on Herbert?
Who's running the ball in LA? No idea.
Who's catching the ball?
Well, so that's obviously a thing. And if they get rid of Keenan Allen, that's the one that really worries me. Having Mike Williams there, I think that role can be divvied up into other players, and I would expect them to make an addition at wide receiver. We talked about it earlier this week. Quentin Johnson certainly did not look good in his first year. So it's hard to believe that he'll, do a full 180 and be great for them, but he'll be a little better. He'll contribute. Palmer will contribute. They'll have something at tight end that'll contribute. And I think the wide receiver spot will be good. But Keenan Allen definitely does need to be there.
Here's my concern with Herbert is we just went through this with an elite level quarterback, elite level passer in Mahomes, who had his receiving core completely turned over essentially over the last 2 seasons. He was able to get by with it because Travis Kelce was unbelievable. At 34, he fell off. Is Keenan Allen at 32 at that position going to fall off even more, or maybe not play as much? And they don't necessarily have a proven guy brought back. Now, they could still stick with Mike Williams, but he'll be coming off an ACL tear. We know he's had a hard time staying healthy for the majority of his career, certainly the last 2 seasons. If Herbert does not get significant help in the receiving core, he may fall outside of my top 12. So
Fair.
I just think, like, again, he's got the ability to be a top 3 guy. We've seen that. But, might lose his pass catching running back, who's been so vital to what their offense has been, because Eckler's a free agent. May not have a good complement to Keenan Allen. And again, relying on Allen just to save him, that didn't work this year. Did for
it did for the first half of the year.
For a few games.
QB1 for the first half of the year.
for a few games it worked out, but Allen couldn't finish the season, and neither could Herbert. And so, I'm just a little concerned until we see who the coach is there. Hopefully, it's a good play caller more so than head coach, and good system. But they got to give him weapons.
Sure. I mean, he averaged just over 25 fantasy points per game in his first 7 games. And let's be fair, in those 7 games, Mike Williams was there, decent amount.
Three
Oh,
games.
On and off the field. He was
Williams was
there
there
a
for good.
decent amount.
Only
But
3
Keenan
games.
Allen was the key. And I think Keenan Allen has to be there. And I would imagine that they will restructure him so that they don't have to let him even test free agency. They'll save 20 million by cutting Mike Williams. It makes all the sense in the world with him coming back from a torn ACL, unless he does a massive restructure. And even then, it's not going to be like Mike Williams was never like the key. He was just someone that could help, make some splash plays. And he probably won't. He'll be like 70% of himself.
I want to bring up something here. You said who's running the ball for them. I want to tell you the teams that had the fewest rushing yards from running backs this season. Guess who's the worst?
Is it the Chargers?
Chargers, yeah.
All
Giants were 2. Bucks were 3. Saints 4. Jaguars 5. Commanders 6. Bengals 7. Chiefs 8. Then you get to the Vikings, didn't really run the ball a lot. I don't think that it's good for a quarterback to have a terrible run game. I think, you don't want them to have an amazing run game, because that makes their offense bad when they have a terrible run game. I do like quarterbacks that have solid run games, like right in the middle. There's a sweet spot. I don't think I want it too great, and I don't think I want it too terrible. Personally.
Sure, but I like having a quarterback that's going to throw the ball a lot, and I especially like a quarterback that doesn't have a good defense on the other side, which means he's chasing points a lot. That's usually a good formula to put up some big fantasy numbers, and that formula was basically what Herbert had through those first 7 games.
Sounds like a crappy team.
Very.
But this is fantasy. It's not reality. We don't get points for team wins or if they make the playoffs.
I don't know. I mean, Mahomes was pretty good with a good team.
Say that again.
Mahomes was pretty good as a fantasy quarterback with a good team
this year. Oh, well, yeah. But no, it's interesting. I mean, how many great fantasy quarterbacks are there on terrible teams? I don't know. I'm just asking out loud. Because you'd be like, "Wow, this team's a dumpster fire." Like
this past season, the top 12 guys.
Just look at the quarterbacks that we've talked about ranking in our top 12. How many of them are on playoff teams?
So here was the top 12
barometer right there. A lot of them.
Here's the top 12 in points per game through week 17. Allen, good team. Flacco, take it for what it's worth. I did a minimum of 5 games just to put him in there. Prescott, great team. Jalen Hurts, great team. Lamar Jackson, great team. Kirk Cousins, again, they were trending toward a playoff team when he was healthy. Sure. Brock Purdy, great team. Jordan Love, playoff team. CJ Stroud, playoff team. Mahomes, playoff team. Herbert, Kyler Murray, small sample size. So for the most part, you want to be on a great team.
You want to be on a playoff team.
It's a good team, right? All right.
I'll leave it to Adam to see if it was like that in years past.
Okay, some other time. Let's talk about Purdy and Dak. And where do you guys have them? My revised rankings will be Dak 11. I know it won't be published this way. Dak 11, Purdy 12. But where do you guys have them?
Dak is 5, Purdy is 7.
7, 8. Lay him straight.
Yeah, I preferred Kyler because I've seen QB1 upside from Kyler. And this always, like I said, these are tough exercises. You have to sort of project their roster. I'm projecting Marvin Harrison to be on that team.
Mm-hmm. And if not him, Malik Neighbors, and that's not bad either.
Yeah, so Kyler, I have ahead of him. Stroud, just looking like this guy, he's got the wide receivers we like. He was so damn good as a rookie. So I put Stroud ahead of him. I put Richardson ahead of them. I didn't put Dave Richard ahead of him.
Should've.
I put Herbert ahead of them. And I have Tua for now, but I'll move Tua behind Dak and Brock Purdy. But Jamie, you're the high guy, especially on Dak. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the second half of the season. We can sit here and say, how great CeeDee Lamb was. A big part of that was Dak Prescott and the way he performed. And, I think a lot of people thought, especially the comments from Mike McCarthy previous offseason, of Kellen Moore, we don't want to be lighting up the scoreboard. They lit up the scoreboard. And, McCarthy's system was amazing for Dak Prescott. And so, do they add something else to their receiving core? But, I think just the guys that he has, and you could just say, okay, the top 2 of CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be in contention to be the number 1 wide receiver. He is for 3 of our 7 people who did these rankings. Top 2 for everybody else. And Jake Ferguson, so that's kind of been what's Dak's formula for success, having a top tier wide receiver and a top tight end that he can rely on. And then what are the pieces around that? So Brandon Cook certainly provided a touchdown element to Dak's game. I think they'll, either bring him back or bring somebody in that can, play at that level, hopefully, maybe even a little bit better. And so I just like to set up for him in the offense that he's operating. And then for Purdy, at some point, he just has to accept reality that this kid can play, and he can play in the system that you want to talk about having weapons. He has the best weapons of anybody on the table, if everyone's healthy. And so 2 receivers, tight end, running back system, offensive line, everything just fell into place for him. And it's a 6-7 game sample size, whatever it was last season at the end of his rookie year, to the majority of this season. He's just been fantastic. And so I'm just not going to overlook it anymore. And so, yes, the running quarterbacks probably have more upside. You know how I love those guys, but he's right there with them in terms of, putting up, 25 points per game when he's on his game.
Well, but that's good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's the thing with Purdy. And this is a question that we'll have to answer later. Last year, you mentioned those games, the way that he finished, he averaged 21.9 fantasy points per game. This year, overall, whole season, not including week 18, 22.4 fantasy points per game. So the question is going to have to be,
wasn't he better than 20? Are you counting the game that he came in and finished?
What's that?
Are you counting his starts or the game that he came in and finished also?
That's every game that he started. So week 18 is excluded.
No, he meant
the Dolphins game when he came in the middle, only scored 15 last year.
Oh, last year? I don't know if I included that. Week 13, I don't remember who they played.
Or week 13, whatever.
So if you want to go back and look at the schedule, knock yourself out. The question is, can Purdy get to 25 fantasy points per game? And if the answer is no, then he's kind of in that he's like at the top of the list of that next tier of quarterbacks that you just pencil in 22 fantasy points per game, which is what he's done for over the balance of a full season now.
So here's my issue with Dak. He had obviously a great year. He was the number 2 quarterback per game and 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, number 3 and 4-point. But it was a down year for quarterbacks. And I think he basically had his upside. I mean, he did have that one year where he played like 4.5 games and he threw 50 times a game or whatever. But I think he kind of probably hit his ceiling this year around 24 fantasy points. And most years that's more like QB7 or so, which is so great. But I think my bigger issue is this. We saw Mahomes, I think, really suffer from Kelsey not being himself. Kelsey gets hurt just before week 1 and just didn't seem like the same guy. What if Lamb?
He's old.
What if Lamb gets hurt? You compare him to Purdy, for example. Purdy's got a lot to fall back on. I originally had Tua ahead of Dak because he's got 2 stud wide receivers. The whole offense right now looks like CeeDee Lamb. But, I don't want to be too worried about that. I just think when you look at downside, he's really got one guy. It's amazing how good he was able to do this year with one big-time contributor and a pretty bad run game, to be quite honest. So very impressive stuff. That's what concerned me with Dak. And when we're talking about guys who are really close, and all of these guys have a ton of upside, and all these guys are really good, and then you still have guys like Jordan Love and Kirk Cousins and Tua himself, who's not going to be in a lot of top 12s. Do we think about that? What if the receiver gets hurt? What does that do?
Well, okay. Tua had these receivers for the majority of the season, right? How did he do?
Yes. He was on pace for like 4,900 yards before the last 5 games of the season. The last 5 games of the season didn't play a single game with both Waddle and Tyreek Hill healthy. So I wanted to give a little bit of love to Tua there because he was actually having a pretty damn good year before those last 5 games. And then in those last 5 games, remember Tyreek Hill drops that touchdown against the Cowboys, then drops one against the Ravens. So Hill wasn't really helping him out. Hill was at less than 100%. But you are right in that he played 5 games with only one of those guys, and he sucked. So you do have to keep that in mind.
That's the case for every quarterback, isn't it? Where if they don't have their best receiver, their numbers are going to suffer.
Right, but I'm saying Tua at least has 2 of those guys.
Well, Cousins had a couple good games before he got hurt without Jefferson.
Purdy had that stretch without Debo and without Trent Williams, and he was bad. So that hurts my argument against Dak. But I just think overall that is a one-man receiving core for Dak Prescott.
And I guess to be fair, Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs producing at a high level was still very good at the end of the season because of his running. So if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. I think you take the mobile quarterbacks out because they have that floor. Yeah. And Dak's
Uh,
not really that guy anymore.
They definitely do, but then you have the risk of what the injuries are. I mean, Kyler's suffered an ACL tear. Anthony Richardson had a shoulder injury that limited him to 2 full games. He had a concussion in another one. So you have those risks if you're just going to rely on that. But if they stay healthy, then there's so much upside. So
Dak's
that's
had 2 seasons where he's missed big time with injury.
who.
Dak.
Yes,
Broken leg, and then last year he had, I forgot what the injury was in
finger.
2020.
Yeah.
You're right. He missed like 5 games.
Sure. And I mean, who knows how long it took Stafford to get going once Cooper Kupp was back. The first 4 games, he didn't have a great fantasy start. And then he got rolling basically around their bye week, as well. So, I mean, I think there's certainly factors to consider, but that's why, if you are in the camp of I have to take 2 quarterbacks just in case, either one's dealing with injury concerns or struggling, you have that fallback option. You have trade, chip as well if you want to, draft that way. Or if your league is not going to draft a lot of quarterbacks, then you don't have to necessarily be the person that clogs up your bench with somebody that you're never going to use.
All right. That's it for our quarterback discussion. There's one other thing I want to say about Tua, because I know nobody, he's going to be 13 for me, so he's not even going to be in my top 12. 27 rushing touchdowns by non-quarterbacks for the Dolphins. Most in the NFL. Right? I mean, that had to have hurt Tua's numbers to some degree, right?
Right. It's the type of thing that also hurts Purdy because they've got an amazing running back there. But it helps. Like, it's why Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, those guys are ahead of him. It's because they've got that role. They can handle short yardage rushing touchdowns. Lamar not as much as the other 2.
Yeah. I think it's going to be fascinating to see if the tush push is banned and if Josh Allen loses Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
you want to talk about something that could absolutely, although you could make the argument he's lost Diggs for the last month and he's still been very good.
Sure, but the threat of Diggs is still important.
Oh gosh, Diggs, he was wide open last week, Sunday night, a deep touchdown. Allen overthrew him.
Yes,
all right, let's take a break. When we come back, I do have fantasy cops. I hope we can squeeze in little fantasy cops. I have some emails, but we have to give some DFS advice as well. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
There's no Belichickery here.
When Sunday football isn't enough,
Dislike that take.
Great take.
that other pregame show will put you over the tops.
I'm all in. Let's go viral here.
Every Sunday, all the insight you need on CBS Sports Network.
Do you guys think we should do DFS or squeeze in the fantasy cops here?
Squeeze it.
The decision has been made for you. We are doing the fantasy cops. Here we go. All right. Fantasy cops, thank you for the emails. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. This is from a man in the middle of New Jersey. He says, am I the jerk? Sent this a few days ago. As of yesterday, I was in a 12-team Dynasty Superflex tight end premium league. It was my 4th year in the league, and I won the championship this year. The day after I won the championship, another manager named John told me that the commissioner named Fred was shutting the league down. I was a little confused because I know the commissioner, Fred, and I hadn't heard anything about that. So John screenshots me a text conversation between him and the commissioner. And in the conversation, it did indeed say that Fred was shutting the league down. Literally, while I was corresponding through text with John, Fred, the commissioner, messages the league and says that he kicked John out of the league and to ignore him. Now I'm really confused about what's going on. So I tell John that Fred said that he was kicked out of the league and that the league is not shut down. Now John is as confused as I am because we're both getting 2 different stories. Fred then text messages me and is giving me a hard time because I told John that he was being kicked out of the league. Things between Fred and I got heated in our conversation and I quit the league. The question is, am I being the jerk? This was just a big, giant bottle of lies and confusion, and I feel that I got stuck in the middle. Was I in the wrong place at the wrong time? Plus, in my defense, the commissioner, Fred, is dishonest by making up a story about how the league is being shut down instead of just being upfront with John, who he's kicking out of the league. I don't want to be in a league with a dishonest commissioner. What do you think?
So how many people don't like the commissioner?
Whoa, sorry. What'd you say?
How many people don't like the commissioner? Just these 2 guys, or the whole league doesn't like him?
I can't. And so I don't know. Right now, I would say just these 2 guys.
I mean, I guess they could, just have a coup and get rid of the commissioner if everybody hates him. But if it's these 2 are on the outs, then they're unfortunately stuck. if he's quitting and the other guy got kicked out.
Man, it's so cowardly to kick a guy out of your league by telling him that the league is folding.
Yeah, I
and
mean, that guy's
lying
a jerk.
to him about it.
Mhm.
It cracked me up. And you got all this correspondence going on behind everyone's back. That is so crazy. Dave, what do you think? What should we do here?
Kick everybody out of the league. Sorry, channeling my inner Heath. This is middle school BS, and I think that the commissioner's got to go for sure.
No, that's not. I don't think that's going to happen. I
No?
wonder what this guy John did to get kicked out of the league. Maybe Fred was justified.
Yeah, but again, if everybody doesn't like the commissioner, there's
Right.
there's easy way to just kick him out and start your own league.
I would say, man, in the middle of New Jersey, you are not the jerk. I don't know that you had a.
Well, here's what you do: reply to the person, find out where they live, send Dan over there, and Dan can straighten it out.
Or just let's make Dan the commissioner.
Everyone gets an undersized T-shirt, and Dan is the T-shirt. Thank you for your fantasy cop submission. Let's talk DFS for the weekend ahead. 6 games, super exciting. I feel like last year I was looking at. I remember just being like, "Ugh, wild card weekend looks terrible." That's just the way I remember it. This is a good wild card weekend. Really excited for these games. So, who are some players in DFS that you guys love this week?
Joe Flacco.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Remember that?
That's a good one. I feel like there's 4 quarterbacks within 600 of each other on FanDuel that you could make a strong case for. Flacco's one of them. If you wanted to spend up a little more, I think Mahomes is a good one. And that might be a
Ooh,
little
not in that weather.
contrarian. Yeah, I don't know. Dolphins have allowed a lot of points to quarterbacks lately. Goff and Stafford are the other two going up against each other. I think I would pick Goff over Flacco.
Yeah, why do you like Flacco so much?
Oh, Houston secondary's not going to stop this Browns awesome attack.
Right.
Marty Cooper. I do have my FanDuel lineup has the Flacco Cooper stack, and of course
Same.
Cooper went for 200 plus yards in week 16.
I have three cheap options that I really like this week based on injury. Brock Wright, assuming Laporta's not going to play. Josh Reynolds, assuming Laporta's not going to play. And Khalil Shakir with Gabe Davis banged up.
And there's one that's not super cheap, but Dallas Goedert is going to be popular. He's not expensive, but he's not super cheap. Yeah. Dave, so wait, who were the quarterbacks that you said were in that? You said Stafford and Goff. What about the quarterbacks in the Dallas game? What about Dak? This one I have trouble with. Like that, the Love, for example. I mean, Love's been good in tough matchups lately. He's been good in general, but the Cowboys, man, look at what they've done. Josh Allen, Tua, Goff. One more, Jalen Hurts. None of them even scored 17 fantasy points. Cowboys recently.
Only 4 quarterbacks this year have put up 20 or more on the Cowboys.
That's the game of the week.
Damn right it is.
The Cowboys and the Packers. It's a playoff game of the week. The Cowboys and the Packers. Hey! All right.
I legit have a tough time picking a winner of that game.
I can't wait for that game.
I can't wait either. I think it's going to be so fun, and I legitimately think Green Bay can take that game.
Oh, Cowboys are so good at home. They're so good at home. But yeah, I do too. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it the game of the week. All right. How about running backs? Running backs you guys like?
Rashad White, love him this week. Absolutely love him.
We're going to have very similar lineups.
Yeah, probably. I like H.N. assuming Mostert's out. I think he's got an opportunity in the snow to be good. So many injuries for the Dolphins. I mean, Pacheco should be a monster.
Yeah, I like Pacheco a lot.
Yeah, I think he'll be popular. I put Warren in my lineup, just figuring that the Steelers are going to be playing from behind, and Warren will pick up a bunch of catches, and he's only 5,600 on FanDuel.
Yep, it's a good call.
Yeah, and he's got 4 to 5 catches, Jalen Warren, 5 straight games. So you get the bonus in DraftKings. You get the full PPR. I'm actually logging into DraftKings right now to make a lineup because I made a FanDuel lineup. I didn't make a DraftKings lineup. How about wide receiver? Who do you guys like there?
Well, Cooper, you mentioned, I think is going to be amazing. I think there's a squeaky wheel coming for A.J. Brown after everything that's unfolded over the last couple of weeks. And against that secondary, he should have a big game. Love the setup for him. Mentioned Shakir as a cheaper option. Same thing with Josh Reynolds. I mean, obviously, look, CD Lamb, Puka, Amara St. Brown. There's a lot of great options for this week that should go off.
Go to that Lions-Rams game and throw a rock, and you will hit a wide receiver that will do very well. I've got 4 of them in my DFS line because we're looking at 2 teams that are great against the run, terrible against the pass, suspect with the pass rush, and 2 quarterbacks that have been throwing it a lot lately and doing well with it.
Do you like Stephon Diggs this week? He's kind of discounted for because he hasn't been that good. But you got potentially Porter covering him. Do you like Diggs this week?
Not to the same extent as some of these other guys, but there's certainly contrarian play in play for him.
Yeah, GPP pick if you're trying to be different. You could stack him with Allen, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, the majority of the public is going to be on the Lions Rams receivers.
Yep. Yeah, they're
Right.
better. Though I'm doing a head-to-head, so I've got a cash game going, and so it's easy to load up on Lions and Rams for that game. But we mentioned 4 quarterbacks at the top. Josh Allen was not one of them, so it's almost contrarian if you go with Allen and Diggs because I think in tournaments a lot of people are going to turn to Flacco, they're going to turn to Goff, they're going to turn to Stafford, and they'll be able to put together a lineup that's a little bit stronger because they're not spending up for Allen.
I don't think Goff will be as popular as you think because of Laporta's absence. So
Yeah.
that will take away some of the appeal, which
Good.
could still
I
make
like
him
that
very
fact
good.
even more. Nice.
Yeah.
What's interesting though is how good the Rams have been against running backs. It's just incredible. So what do you do with the Lions? Do you like the Lions running backs in this game?
Again, if you want to be somewhat contrarian, if you're looking into the numbers, if there are people that are diving into it to try and find something, then Jahmyr Gibbs, again, there's a pass catching opening for Detroit. So how do they supplement that and offset the loss of Laporta? Is it let's rely on no offense, but a backup tight end in Brock Wright or our third wide receiver in Reynolds, or do we use arguably our second best playmaker, maybe our best playmaker in Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more? And that's something they could do.
All right, tight ends. Kelsey's the most expensive. I'm hoping a couple weeks off for Kelsey will get him going again. Njoku. The Texans have always been a great matchup for tight ends, but they've been better lately for sure. He caught a touchdown last time he faced them. Ferguson, Goddard, Kincaid, Schultz.
Schultz is an interesting one if Delpit does not play because they've been very bad against tight ends lately with Delpit not back. Now they opened the window for him to return, and so he could get back on the field this week. We know how that window has gone for some players. So if he plays, I don't love Schultz as much. If he's out, Schultz is one of my favorite plays.
Is Delpit the guy that usually covers slower tight ends?
It's just been a corresponding scenario. Since Delpit's injury, tight ends have been fantastic against them.
It's true. Yeah, weeks 14 through 17, 10 or more half PPR points to a tight end in 3 of the 4. And before that, they were pretty good against tight ends. So maybe it is Delpit.
All right. So, sorry. It's just really getting very difficult to get on DraftKings right now.
No.
All right. Yeah, let's get some lineups then, I guess, or whatever you want to do. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a FanDuel.
I like watching you struggle trying to get on the internet like you're an 85-year-old man.
I'll go first. I have a Flacco at quarterback, Rashad White and Achane at running back, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, and A.J. Brown at receiver. Don't forget Cooks scores his every home game. Brock Wright at tight end, Khalil Shakir at flex, and the Chiefs DST against that crappy Dolphins.
Sorry, slow it down. Give it to me.
Yes, I'll do it again. Flacco as the quarterback, Rashad White and Achane at running back, A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper, and Brandon Cooks at receiver, Brock Wright at tight end, Khalil Shakir at flex, and the Chiefs defense.
I like the Chiefs.
Hold on a second. Now, what are you going to do, though, if A.J. Brown doesn't play? And are you going to have faith in him regardless because it left with that knee injury?
Well, I'll find out today what his practice status is, but I would assume based on the reports that he's fine. And again, I think there's a squeaky wheel game coming. Plus, I don't think he'll be very popular if you're doing the full game slate, full playoff slate of wildcard weekend.
What website was that, by the way? That was FanDuel?
FanDuel.
Okay. I'm about to start making my DraftKings lineup. Dave, go ahead.
Just in time for the show to start. Okay, my FanDuel line. This is my cash game lineup. I told you I was going with a Lions stack, and here it is. It's Goff, throwing to Josh Reynolds, Brock Wright, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to bring it back with Kupp and Puka. Puka's in my flex. And so how am I building around that? I went cheap at running back with Jalen Warren. I've got Rashad White in my lineup as well. And then all that's left after that, because I've got so much in that one game between the Lions and the Rams, is the defense, and it's Houston at 3,500. Browns opponents have at least 12 or more fantasy points in each of their last 3. That excludes week 18. Touchdowns have helped. Flacco has 6 interceptions in his past 3 games. The Texans have scored at least 10 in 7 of their past 9. They did not against Indianapolis last week. It is a risk, but it's a home team in the playoffs and a defense that, other than last week, they've been playing pretty well this season. So I'll take the chance that they get some turnovers and sacks of one Joe Flacco and hopefully find an interception return for a touchdown.
Do any of you guys have DeMarcus Robinson in your lineups?
No, that would be a great call. That's a good one.
I'm going to put
What's
him in
his
my
price?
He's 3,600 on DraftKings. So
Okay, well, he's going to be more than that on FanDuel. Let me see what he is on FanDuel.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm looking. Dun, dun, dun. 6,300. How about that? So 36 on DraftKings and 63 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean the prices are lower on DraftKings. So I have Aaron Jones in a lineup. How do you guys feel about Aaron Jones? You know, he's had 20 plus carries in 2 or 3 straight games. I think he had 5 catches in week 18. AJ Dillon may or may not play, and it's a tough run defense for sure. Hankins being in or out is a big deal. I know it's not a good matchup, but thoughts on Aaron Jones?
Good contrarian play.
Okay, and I will say Rashad White, somebody we love. He is the 2nd most expensive running back on DraftKings. He's the 5th most expensive on FanDuel. And then I got to ask you about Kyron Williams. He is the most expensive running back on both websites. And he's facing a very tough Lions run defense, but matchups haven't really mattered for Kyron Williams. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be a little nervous because of that Lions defense being as good as it is. And the Rams are going to recognize pretty quickly that they can air it out with Stafford against that secondary for Detroit.
DSTs.
And Chiefs are the easiest one for me. I mean,
Yeah.
At home in the snow against Tua, who struggled. Banged up Waddle if he plays the best. Banged up Mostert if he plays the best. Tyreek's banged up. I mean, we've seen, the struggles for this offense the last few weeks. So I think the Chiefs hopefully realize what their formula is to win if they are going to win, which is not necessarily just have to rely on Mahomes. Run the ball, play defense, and your passing game is not the savior at this point. So they can play defense with as well as anybody in the league right now. Certainly they're building for this week. And then, Pacheco's been awesome for them. So
yep. I would have taken the Chiefs as well, but I needed to save some shekels. So Texans win 500 less.
Okay, I mean, for me to have just figured out how to use a cell phone and log on to DraftKings and make this lineup. And have we talked about the Bucs wide receivers, by the way, against this?
We have not.
No,
right?
Also a good place. Yep.
I mean, especially Godwin in PPR and full PPR on DraftKings, but I've got both of them. I did my flex last and I had enough money for Mike Evans, but I have Stafford. Maybe I should put Mayfield in there. Stafford, Pacheco, and Jalen Warren, Puka, Godwin, DeMarcus Robinson, Goddard at tight end, Evans at flex, Chiefs DST. Wow. Unreal lineup. Good for me. Okay.
You'll win $7.
I'll lose the $3 that I put in. I don't even know how I have money in here, by the way. Okay. So that's it for that. Let's read some emails. fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. From Chris. I listen to the show every day. I'd love to hear more dedicated episodes after the fantasy season wraps before the NFL playoffs start to focus on rankings and draft strategies for people doing NFL playoff competitions. I play in a league that does a snake draft and total points after the Super Bowl wins. Well, how about that? We're doing basically the same thing, except it's the Noah's Ark League. It's 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 flex, 2 tight end, 2 kickers, and 2 DSTs.
So the stories on the site. I have 2 playoff challenge stories. One is our draft recap of the 7 of us that did 14-round draft. And then I have a rankings, playoff challenge rankings. I'm playing in 4 playoff challenge leagues, including the one that we have. And they're three different formats. The one that we did, which is total points throughout the playoffs. So you're taking the hope, like Adam did, to go all in on the Bills. There were three people that went all in on a team. You went all in on the Bills. I'm sorry, four people. You went all in the Bills. Thomas went all in on the Rams.
Vikings.
Dan, no, the Rams. Dan went all in on the Lions, and I kind of
It's me.
backed my way into going in on the Bucks.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I went all in on the Ravens.
No, I think the way I did it was you had to have at least four players on that team to make that type of commitment.
I've got that though.
Do you?
Yeah. I've got Lamar, Odell, Andrews, and the DST. And Justice Hill. I got 5.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. I probably was looking at good players. You only have one. So in any event, that's certainly a strategy to go about with building those teams. Then I'm in the FPPC, I think it is. FFPC, excuse me, where you're only allowed to pick one player. It's total points throughout the playoffs. One player from a team, and so you get double points for the Super Bowl. So I went with Allen and McCaffrey as my quarterback, running back, because I think it's a Bills 49ers Super Bowl. But in any event, it was tough. Like, what do you do with Tyreek Hill, who could have a terrible game, but probably the best offense against the Chiefs and Snead? Like, is there a Texans player to use? Is there, which Ravens player do you prioritize? I think I actually went with Justin Tucker, because you have to start a kicker there. And then another format is the third format is you pick a lineup each week. It's almost like DFS, but once you use those players, they're done. So you can only use them once.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this email was about a total points. Obviously, I had the first pick in this draft. It was an 8-team draft. So I took Josh Allen as super flex, or 2 QBs. Took Josh Allen, and then on the 2-3 turn, I was very thrilled. I took Diggs and James Cook. But look, I think it's pretty obvious. If you're going to do one of these leagues where you get total points, the best team that's playing this week that has...
You want 4 games.
You want 4 games, but also it's like, I can't say the Bills have the best chance to win the Super Bowl, but they certainly have the best chance to win this week, right? Like, you could go with the Cowboys. The Cowboys could lose this week. It would be shocking if the Bills lost this week to the Steelers without TJ Watt. So the Bills are the best. And then I think most likely scenario is they're hosting the Chiefs next week, and I like them to beat the Chiefs. So
they have of anybody in the wild card weekend the easiest path to the playoffs, and that's saying something because they still have to go through Baltimore potentially. But we know Lamar Jackson's playoff history hasn't exactly been great. So at some point he's going to snap that. But knowing that they had Pittsburgh, knowing that they have the Chiefs, Mahomes' first road game in the playoffs, there's a lot to like about Buffalo getting to the Super Bowl with the opportunity to play 4 games. Like, I think you look at it and say, okay, Baltimore can play 3 games. San Francisco can play 3 games, assuming they get to the Super Bowl. Those are ideal situations. And then if there's another wild card round team that you like, and most people are going to say the Cowboys, 3 games or 4 games out of those, that type of team is what you like. But the best way to do it, the way that I say it and explain it in the story, is you have to map out the playoffs yourself. And so, I'll rank it my way. If Dave did rankings, Heath did rankings, they would rank it their way. But in any event, my rankings reflect how I expect the playoffs to unfold. So the teams that I think are going to play 2 games are ranked ahead of the teams that are going to play 1 game. And so to rank it, I think Tampa Bay beats Philadelphia. So to rank Baker Mayfield over Jalen Hurts was painful to me, but that's the way I expect it to go. That I think that the Eagles will be one and done, and I think the Bucks will win. That being said, if you feel the opposite and you think the Eagles can make a significant playoff run, then you go all in on Jalen Hurts and you go all in on the Eagles.
Yeah. All right.
Do you have a favorite NFC team that could play 4 games?
I have the Cowboys playing 3 and losing in the NFC Championship game. I have the 49ers playing 3 and making it to the Super Bowl. The teams that I have playing 2 games would be Detroit and Tampa Bay. Detroit is the one, honestly, that makes me the most nervous. I see the Rams. The Rams are 7-1 in the last 8 games, and the 1 game they lost was on the punt return against the Ravens in Baltimore.
That's my team.
The Eagles are favored this week, by the way.
Sure. But if there was one team that could play 4, like Dallas is an obvious answer because they're the 2 seed. But I think the Rams can go into Detroit and win. I think the Rams can go into San Francisco and win too. Those 2 teams always play each other Very, very tough.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan always wins
And my sleeper is the
not
Browns.
always.
most of the time.
What's the record?
Well, there's the famous meme of him holding Sean McVay as his baby,
My sleeper is the Browns.
and that's another one. Yeah,
He could easily lose this week. It should be a
Browns
great
are
game.
another one.
Going to Baltimore, that's not a team, if I'm Baltimore, that I want to face necessarily in the second
no,
round.
Flacco already beat them, right? Or no, the Browns already. Browns already beat them.
I'd be rooting for the Dolphins if I were yes, they did. I'd be rooting for the Dolphins if I were the Ravens right now. I'd rather play them. Yeah, I think the NFC is just awesome. I mean, totally. Any of these three games, I could see any outcome. I'm gonna have the way I'm talking. I'm gonna have to take the Packers plus 7.5. But all right, let's get the next email here. It's GA in Philadelphia. And he says, grade the trade in a half PPR Superflex league. I traded 1.1 in the rookie draft for 1.5 and AJ Brown. And it's tight end premium too.
1.1 in the rookie draft for AJ Brown.
And 1.5. Moved down 4 spots and got AJ Brown.
That's a huge win.
Yeah, I agree.
Well done. From Stefan.
Dix.
Diggs.
Yeah. Why can't I catch the ball? In a dynasty league that has been running for the past 5 or 6 years, something came up. A manager did not have a chance to make the playoffs, started backups over his starters in week 14. He was tanking for the 101 rookie pick. He was playing the commissioner. The commissioner ended up getting the 1 seed, and the benching manager got the first pick in the rookie draft. This is a competitive league, and we've never had this happen before. And there are some who are anti-tanking. Can you please share your thoughts on whether tanking should be allowed in dynasty leagues, and what rules should we implement? How has this never happened before? This happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Dynasty leagues, we're fine with it. You can set your own rules. A player has to be active. Can't start a guy who's inactive or injured or on a bye. You can do what you want. I mean, I'm fine with it. You're paying money. You're losing it that year. You're not guaranteeing yourself future success. So that 3 teams were tanking in the dynasty league I started this year. I'm fine with it. How do you guys feel?
Well, let me ask you as the commissioner, because I think this is a big part of it. Did you check everyone's lineup every week?
Just those 3.
Just those 3. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Mostly. I may have missed a few, but
But you made it a conscious effort to, I'm going to check Dan, I'm going to check Tim, I'm going to check whoever else the third one was. I don't remember, but
yeah. Darian. Yeah. I checked them. And sometimes other people in the league would alert me if there was an issue.
Right.
So you can
because I think like Heath, and it's not his fault. There was a few times in the dynasty he runs. I know there was some questionable lineups that people had in tanking. But again, I think a lot of people, what they do is when they're tanking, they don't even care. I'm just going to leave Mike White in my lineup at quarterback and not even worry about it because technically he's active.
That's what Schneier did. Yeah. Which I was fine with.
Should be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. McVay 4-10 going into last week. We shouldn't count last week's game against Kyle Shanahan. Playoffs, McVay is 1-0 against Shanahan in the playoffs.
By the way, it's actually, I think, harder to, if you say tanking is not allowed and you have to somehow start your best lineup, it's much harder to police that. What are you going to say? Hey, this guy's projected for more points. How could you possibly start?
Yeah, you can't do that.
X over player Y, right? So I think it's harder to police that.
No, just make sure they have
I'm just asking this, not that I have a strong feeling either way. What's the objection to tanking? Because I think you laid it out, Adam. Somebody's paying money to lose, and there is no guarantee of future success.
It's not as fun. I hate it. I didn't like that.
Because it's, I guess the rest of the league is benefiting by winning each week.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then you could have a manager who was not tanking earlier in the season and he beat you or she beat you. And then in week 12, this manager is tanking and gave one of your competitors an easy win. I could see it. But you know what? Like it happens in the NFL, basically. Teams rest players. They don't want to win late in the season. It's not ideal, but it's fine. What would you say?
Unless you're the Giants.
I mean, the Giants try.
I don't think it happens as much in the NFL as you think.
No, I'm not saying.
But it should happen in Dynasty. It's part of the strategy of these long-term leagues. And if you're really that concerned about somebody doing it, you could always ask them to, pay a year advance of their buy-in for the league. And that way there's a financial commitment attached that says, okay, this guy's not going anywhere. He's going to run his team his way. He's going to rebuild it. You know, no one tanks in redraft, obviously, but you've got to. It's an element of dynasty play.
I've never tanked in redraft. I'll say that.
Who would? It's stupid. Other than my dad. My dad did.
Well, some those people who make spite drops.
That's what he did. He was
go.
eliminated from the playoffs, and he dropped everybody from his team. And I'm the commissioner of the league. So I'm like, no, Dad, you can't do this. He's like, why not? I want to help everybody. I'm like, Dad, you're an idiot. And so I had to go and put everybody back on his team. And then I had to lock him out of his own team. And then I had to set his lineup for like the last 2 weeks of the season. It was a mess. And now he won't play fantasy anymore.
Oh, it's for your own benefit, I guess. Well, I have no food in the house, so it's taking every ounce of restraint in me not to go get the football Sunday bagel sandwich that I like getting so much. So, but I won't today. I'll take it easy.
If you're gonna do it, at least be a man and go order it face to face.
You know what? I respect that. I will, but I'm not gonna do it. I had hot dogs last night, so I gotta get it a little healthier. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. Enjoy your 3-day weekend. We'll talk to you Tuesday on Fantasy Football Today.